In the summer of 1914, a single gunshot in Sarajevo lit the fuse for a global explosion. Archduke Franz Ferdinand's assassination triggered a domino effect of alliances, plunging Europe into what would become the First World War. In Liverpool, a 19-year-old shop clerk named Albert Fletcher, known to his mates as Birdie, felt the call of duty. Like thousands of other young men, he was swept up in a wave of patriotic fervor. The posters called for heroes, and Birdie was ready to answer. While many from the port city of Liverpool joined the Navy, Birdie chose the Army. He walked into a recruitment office, determined to do his part for king and country. The recruitment center was a scene of organized chaos. Lines of men, young and old, snaked around the block. The medical exams were surprisingly brief. Are you between 19 and 30? Are you over 5 feet 3 inches tall? Can you see the target and hear the officer's commands? For Birdie, a healthy young man, it was a breeze. He met all the requirements with ease. In the blur of the moment, with a hand raised, he swore an oath of allegiance. Just like that, Albert Birdie Fletcher, the shop clerk, was now a private in the British Army. His old life was over, and a new, uncertain chapter had just begun. Birdie was assigned to the King's Liverpool Regiment, one of the most respected in the British Army. The transition from civilian to soldier was brutal. The training was relentless, designed to break down the individual and rebuild him as part of a cohesive fighting unit. Days were filled with endless drills, grueling marches, and harsh discipline from sergeants who seemed to shout more than they spoke. He learned to march in perfect sync, to respond to orders without hesitation, and to trust the man next to him with his life. This wasn't just about learning to fight. It was about surviving a new, industrialized form of warfare, unlike anything the world had ever seen. Central to his training was mastering his new best friend, the short magazine Lee Enfield rifle, or SMLE Mk3. This wasn't just a weapon. It was a masterpiece of military engineering. With its 10-round magazine and smooth bolt action, it was far superior to the German Mauser. The instructors drilled them relentlessly. A well-trained British soldier was expected to fire 15 to 20 aimed rounds in a single minute, a feat known as the Mad Minute. This incredible rate of fire often led German soldiers to mistakenly believe they were facing machine guns, not just riflemen. For Birdie, the weight of the rifle became familiar, a comforting and deadly extension of his own arms. By 1916, the patriotic optimism of the early days had been washed away by mud and blood. Birdie was no longer a fresh-faced recruit. He was a battle-hardened veteran of the trenches. His uniform was a collection of essential, life-saving gear. The 1908 pattern webbing held his ammunition pouches, bayonet, entrenching tool, and a water canteen. On his head, the iconic Birdie helmet offered protection from shrapnel. A small box respirator, his defense against poison gas, was never far from reach. But in the waterlogged trenches of the Western Front, one of the most valuable pieces of kit was a dry pair of socks. The constant dampness led to trench foot, a debilitating condition that could take a soldier out of the fight as effectively as any bullet. The trench system was a complex subterranean world. It wasn't just one long ditch, but a maze of interconnected lines. The frontline trench was where the immediate danger lay. Behind it was the support trench, offering a secondary line of defense. Further back still was the reserve trench, where troops could rest before being called up. These lines were connected by communication trenches, which allowed for the movement of men, supplies, and the wounded, all shielded from enemy sight. The idea was to rotate troops every few days, moving them from the intense stress of the front line to the relative safety of the rear. But in the heat of battle, these ideal rotations were a luxury they could rarely afford. Life in the trenches was a strange mix of extreme danger and crushing boredom. A typical day began before sunrise with the stand-to, where every soldier would man the fire step, rifle ready, guarding against the dawn raid. After the stand-to, if no attack came, the day settled into a routine. There were inspections, chores like repairing trench walls or cleaning latrines, and endless hours of waiting. To pass the time and keep their minds off the grim reality, soldiers wrote letters. Birdie wrote constantly to his parents in Liverpool, describing the mundane details of his day, but carefully omitting the horrors. These letters were a lifeline, a fragile connection to a world of peace he wasn't sure he'd ever see again. Even on the quietest days, death was a constant neighbor. A stray sniper's bullet or a random artillery shell could end a life in an instant. Birdie had his share of close calls during dugout duty. These small, forward observation posts were dug into the side of the trench, sometimes just yards from no man's land. His job was to sit there, often for hours on end, peering through a small slit, watching for any sign of enemy movement. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the scuttling of rats, which were as numerous as the soldiers. On a good day, nothing happened. On a bad day, the distant shape of a German helmet meant an attack was imminent. The ghosts of past battles followed every soldier. For Birdie, that ghost was the Battle of the Somme. He had been there on that first horrific day, going over the top into a storm of machine gun fire. He saw friends fall beside him, cut down in an instant. Birdie himself had been lucky, taking a piece of shrapnel to his leg, a wound serious enough to get him sent back from the line, but not serious enough to send him home. He was patched up and returned to duty within weeks. But the physical wound healed far faster than the mental one. The memory of the Somme, the noise, the fear, the sheer scale of the slaughter was a scar on his soul that would never fade. As darkness fell, the tension in the trench would rise again. Dusk was another prime time for an attack, so it was back to the fire step for the evening stand-to. Night brought its own set of dangers. Patrols would slip out into the darkness of no man's land, a hellish landscape of mud, craters, and tangled barbed wire. Birdie had been on several of these patrols, his heart pounding in his chest as he crawled on his belly to repair wire or scout enemy positions. The slightest noise could give them away. As 1916 drew to a close and 1917 loomed, there was no end in sight. The war, which was supposed to be over by Christmas, was grinding into its third year. For Birdie Fletcher and millions like him, the future was a cold, muddy trench under a dark and uncertain sky. Thank you for watching this journey into the life of a British